Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. I'm also still trying to find where to record this podcast in my new condo. If you're watching on YouTube, you will notice this is not my regular background. I'm actually sitting, which feels really weird, but I'm excited to test it out. Usually I stand to record all my podcasts, but I'm sitting. This is very bizarre. It's very strange. Anyways, not important. Important to me because this feels weird, but not important to you. Before we get to this week's industry episode, I want to remind you what you can do to help support this little independent podcast. As you all know, this is an indie production. I do everything myself. I don't have some big giant podcast conglomerate helping me out, which means I make no money from this show. I don't have any sponsors. So if you would like to support this little indie passion project of mine that you are listening to right now, what can you do? You can like, subscribe, and review wherever you get your podcasts. You can also review on places like IMDb. That is so appreciated, and that actually feeds the algorithm monster and shows this podcast to more people. And what happens when you have more people listening? You build more of a community. And yay, community. We love that. And always, 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 please support independent podcasts. So if you have a little moment of time, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast. It is so, so, so appreciated. All right. Now this week's industry guest. I'm so excited. Okay. So as you know, 2024, I've dubbed the year where I will learn what every person in the crew of a film, what they do on set, what their job is. Cause I didn't go to film school. I didn't go to theater school. I have no idea what half these people do. And that means I'm probably not alone. Some of you might not know what these jobs are. So I badger these individuals and I bring them on my podcast. And the first question I ask is, what do you do? So my guest this week is an intimacy coordinator. So intimacy coordinator, an intimacy professional, intimacy director, Christina Pitts Jazzar. Okay. Christina is amazing. We have been social media friends for a while and have been wanting to have a conversation for ages. And it finally happened and it was epic, as you would expect. Intimacy coordination or intimacy professionals have been, kind of talked about a little bit more than usual, I would say, over the last couple of years. It's become a kind of a hot topic, especially with the Me Too movement. And so we delve into this, into what her career is, what she does on set, what a day looks like on set. We also talk about my own personal experience with an intimacy director in a live theater show a couple of years ago, which spurned this whole conversation. I think it's so important for us, especially as second act actors, how to converse with our friends and loved ones about the potential for staged film, TV intimacy, especially those people in our lives who are used to us being our other careers. For my own example, some of my friends have never seen me as anything else but a doctor. So then to see me up on a stage with somebody kissing them is very jarring. I mean, it's not jarring for me as the actor because we worked on the technicality of it and doing my job. But for the audience, it can be a little bit, jarring for lack of a better word. So fascinating subject. I'm so excited for you to hear her story and hear all about the world of intimacy coordination, which is huge in our industry these days. Thank goodness. Please enjoy the incredible Christina Pitts Jazzar. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Tell me your story. How did you get into this crazy business and intimacy coordination, intimacy direction, everything?
Yeah, I've been dancing since I was 3 years old. My mom's like, get this parkour kid out of my house. And so she put me in dance, which was just fantastic. And I've never stopped dancing. So that was my into the industry. I went to Ryerson, now MTU, or TMU, sorry. And then that dance placement took me to cruise ships, and I moved to Europe and just danced. I've just been dancing nonstop, really. And I'm turning 50 this year, and I still am dancing. I mean, what is going on with that? I love it. So yeah, dance took me all over the world, really. And then when I came back to Canada in was it 2004? I think SARS hit, and live theater had kind of taken a plummet. And I was lucky to land a commercial, which got me right into ACTRA, like just doing movement. I was a Dutch can kick line dancer for like a pop commercial. That was super fun. Anyway, and then I just started doing more film and television, more movement, a lot of movement. And then I was on The Strain. I worked on all seasons of The Strain as one of the vampires and one of the Strigoi. And that had my introduction with Guillermo del Toro, who I was so blessed to be one of the choreographers on The Shape of Water through Roberto Campanella, who is such a good friend of mine, and he's fantastic. One of the producers was, have you heard of intimacy coordinations? I was like, what is that? And oh, wow. If I had had an intimacy coordinator in so many of the jobs that we've done, it would have been so exceptional. And I think I just gravitate to helping people. I've been, like I said, as a dance captain, assistant choreographer for many, many years, and then choreographer. And I love helping people with their visions. So just that communication and wanting to help clarify and all the things that I'm sure we'll talk about what intimacy coordination is all about. But to me, it's communication and bringing in all of the information and making sure everyone's on board and on the same page is something that really excites me. So, I looked into it and started training, and then COVID hit and and all the things. And I couldn't get to LA or New York where I wanted to train. And then I just asked and asked. I am not a shy person to ask. I don't feel like I'm like overzealous or like outgoing in an uncomfortable way. But if there's something I want to ask, like I try and teach my kids, it doesn't hurt to ask. You're not going to be worse off if someone says no. And no's are good because even in intimacy coordination, you find a new way to do something, or you try and figure it out. So it really is a lot of problem solving. And anyway, that's who I am as a person. I am not afraid to ask and get a no, I guess. I don't know if that comes from the industry, acting, dancing, whatever. And just, you're always prepared for no. So when you get a yes, it's like, woohoo. It's like super fun. So I just asked and asked of like, over COVID, since there was no in-person training and no traveling, and just reaching out to everyone who I could figure was a part of this, like theatrical intimacy education was such a fantastic resource for me. And then they started I feel like I was the catalyst for this, but no, of course I wasn't. I'm sure hundreds of people were asking them how they can continue the education online. But then doors started opening and people started having workshops and classes and sharing information. And then a fantastic group of Canadians started an educational program called Principal Intimacy Professionals. And I trained through them. And then, I just went running. I was like asking anyone who I'd worked with, or DOPs, ADs, directors, just, hey, I'm an intimacy coordinator now. And I haven't looked back. I love it.
Ugh. It was so interesting. Well, there's so many things. I cannot wait to talk to you about this. Tell me about, like, what is an intimacy professional? Because I think so many people are learning about what it is, and so many people still have, like, the thought in their mind that you're the sex police.
Right.
But at least from my experience, I mean, I've worked with intimacy coordinators in live theater personally. The biggest thing I've noticed is that so many people who come into this career path are movement based. Like you were saying, choreographers, fight directors, stunt performers, because there's so much choreography that is involved with this career. So please tell me all about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because working in film and TV, I mostly have worked in film and TV. I do come from theater, and I would be excited to participate as intimacy director, but I find the pace that I've clocked into is with film, which is a lot faster, and just working at that tempo. Movement, like I as far as I understand, it really came from fight direction, from the safety and the protocols and the conversations that happen within the fight direction world that Tony Asina, I believe, started that conversation. Like, why isn't this considered for intimacy work? Like when two folks are moving together and playing together, and it's kind of was always left to the actors to, well, you two figure it out, or whatever you're comfortable. Okay, go. Let's just see what happens. Yikes. Like, would you ever do that with, fight choreography? Okay, just swing a punch and hope you don't hit somebody. No, you want to have conversations and talk about it. So yeah, when my agent and I were talking, when I was getting into it, being a movement specialist or movement coach, having that training was a big part of the conversation. But when I went through the education, it actually is such a small part in my mind. And I don't know if that's just because movement sits so well with me, or I kind of consider myself as an actor's movement choreographer, like wanting to translate that language of dance and choreography to, I don't know if this is the right word, pedestrians or layman's terms, or common language for actors and people who don't have choreography in their bodies and language. So I really like to bring that communication into simplicity or into everyday life, or, when you're doing this at the gym, this is what this movement feels like, or when you're walking or whatever it is, just kind of finding what maybe you, Janet, feels your language is and translating dance for you. Like, I love to really individualize it. But as far as being an intimacy coordinator, there really are 4 C's, and you probably hear this a lot, but there's communication, which is like my number one, my personal number one. I want to make sure every department's on board. I want to make sure everybody has thought and conversed and talked about what it is we're asking and going to be filming and editing and what the end product is, like all the things. Let's get all the information. And then let's get the other C, which is consent, such a huge one. And wow, I wish they just taught consent at school. Like, you know what I mean? It's so ridiculous that it was mind blowing. Like, it was so ridiculous that I was like, wait a second. Oh my gosh. Like, what? Of course, consent. Of course. Like, let's just give ourselves onus to say yes or no, or maybe, or I feel this or that. Anyway, consent is fantastic. And then choreography, where we want to try and set it and block it. And then closure, which is the other part of the C's that really excites me. Something, again, I wish I had known or thought about bringing those practices. So much of what we do as actors and performers is building our character, building our backstory, creating all of these feels and emotions and the way we walk and another person within our vessel, within our instrument, and that's us. And then, okay, closing or show's over, cut, all the things, you walk away. What do I do with all of that I've just built into my core? And then it's like, okay, who is Christina now? Or who is, how does that person still exist or leave? And so closure practices are so fantastic. And I love to share that with anyone who wants to listen about putting that in your tool belt and creating processes for yourself to have closure.
I would love to talk to you a little bit about my own experience, just because I've taken level 1, and just because I was so fascinated by my own experience working with an intimacy director in a live theater show that I was part of. And this was recently, I know, right?
Clapping.
I learned.
Is this with IDC? Is level 1 with IDC?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah. I was just blown away by my own experience, and I'd love to talk to you a bit about it, because I think it'll resonate with a lot of listeners on my show who are coming into a career in acting after a full-on separate career and life.
Yep.
And so for myself personally, it was a theater show. There was intimacy involved with a co-star of mine. It was beautifully choreographed. My co-star had extensive experience with stage intimacy. I had 0 because you don't learn that in medical school.
Right.
And it was a fascinating thing as a learner and as a scientist to realize that what we were doing, like we did the whole like build up to like kissing. We did the whole, like the director would sit in different parts of the theater while we would choreograph and say, ooh, that doesn't look good from this seat. Move your hand this way, pressure this way. It was so technical.
Nice.
And then the closure practice, which as a scientist makes me tingle with joy about, so, you know, my co-star and I developed this closure practice of like tactile high-fiving, auditory, speaking. We had an intimacy check-in before we went on stage. We checked in, we tapped in.
Fantastic.
And it was just fascinating. Oh yeah. It was just fascinating to me about, again, the science behind it all, right? Like it makes sense that I was able to fully turn into this character, tap out, turn out of it.
Yeah.
But what I would love to talk to you about is the reaction that I had from people in my life who are not in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many people who I was with my now ex at the time who had, you know, consented, been like, yeah, everything's good. Mm-hmm. We had a great conversation about it. But people coming up to me saying, I don't know how you can do that. I would never be able to do that. Mm-hmm. That's cheating on my partner. Yeah. I had somebody say, I wouldn't want my kids seeing me being intimate.
Interesting.
I had people in the audience who didn't know me as an actor, just knew me as Dr. McMorty, being like, that's not your partner. Yeah. Like, I was so uncomfortable seeing that. Yeah. And it was very interesting because now I have added this new part of my life that people who were in the other part being like, no, but why do you want to be an actor now? Like, you were a doctor and now you want to like make out with people on stage. Mm-hmm. I had somebody say, oh, that's a cool excuse to like get your kicks on when you're bored of your part. Like, it was a fascinating response.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because so many of my listeners are trying to enter this career where they might have to experience intimacy and nobody in their lives prior, when they were a teacher, cop, lawyer, doctor, they would never have thought that was a thing to occur in their life.
Yeah. So many things are coming up for me. Really great points. One, my husband and I had this conversation with a friend of his, one of his best friends. He's an actor. And so we've grown up knowing the world of imagination and being able to separate and have all the things. And I mean, he's played Bernardo 100 times. So Anita and Bernardo's passion is always hot and fun. But yeah, this best friend whose partner was outside of the world. And there was this whole conversation about trust. And I feel like no matter what world you live in, when you have a partner, there should be, I shouldn't say have to be, but the goal in my world would be to have the communication, have the trust, have, like you said, your partner was okay with it. Have all those conversations when you're an actor, when this is the world I live in, these are the things that could happen. Another thing, so yeah, having trust. And if it's not there and your partner's jealous, your partner doesn't understand, your partner doesn't want it to happen, then maybe the conversation of why are you partners is building, or how, because I follow joy. I believe in one life, one joy, follow it. You know, obviously caring, kind conversations, considerations within that world. But I'm not always happy. I'm not always having the best day, but I gravitate. I want to follow joy because I feel like it keeps me younger. It keeps me happier. Like, why wouldn't you? Right? We can't always have it. There's going to be things that happen in life, but that's sort of my light that I try and follow. So having people in unison with that who can help celebrate is where I would want my conversation to be with my partner. And then the other side of that came up from what you were saying of everyone else's reactions is that's a them issue. That's a how they, where they live in their world. And I'm sorry you feel that way. And my partner and I had a conversation, and acting isn't about cheating, isn't about having, extra feels. It's about something that activates a joy inside me. It's about growing and challenging. Like one thing, that so many motivational speakers talk about is learning and growing throughout life. Like I tell my kids, my one son is graduating high school. School doesn't end. Life, when school ends, university, whatever level, you still get to learn and grow. Like this is not the end of that life. So we want to learn and grow always. And so, if acting brings that into me, I'm sorry that it made you feel uncomfortable. All of those things, having conversations with friends and families, but that's a you thing, I've sorted it out at my end. My partner and I are cool. I'm happy with all of these choices. It's the world of imagination. I have closure practices. Let's talk about that. So much conversation within what you said. And then there's a part, the intimacy coordinator in me. The audience doesn't always need to be aware of a kiss, but if there's like strobe lighting and things like that, like intimacy coordinators bring in that conversation to the production. Is this something we should tell the audiences about? Like it's like when you go to a movie, what rated R means. You're not going to bring your 12-year-old, or maybe you will. Maybe your family is okay with, or enjoys having conversations about sex and how humans interact. And my 12-year-old's going to that movie because this is part of our lives, and we talk about these things and whatever it is, right? Violence, strobe lighting. Like there is an onus, I feel, for an intimacy coordinator to bring into the conversation. Okay, we've talked about consent within the actors. Now let's make sure the audience consents to coming to the show.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is a really interesting perspective. And I think it comes again to the point of, do we need this, right? Is this necessary in telling of the story?
Right.
And if yes, not only does the audience consent to it, but does it look good for the audience? And I think that's where was a realization for me. And now when I think about that, it's a realization. I'm like, duh, is again, this job is not sex police. It's making the production look better.
Yeah, of course.
It looks so much better when it's choreographed and done well by a professional who understands.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the analogy I think of, and this is terrible, is the movie Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I'm going to have to now.
It's the whole ending is, this couple, Zack and Miri, decide that like they're going to have sex on camera and they're actually in love with each other.
Right.
And when they watch it back in this porno that they made, it's so boring, even though they were like so in love when they were filming it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Being like nobody, and like the people making the porno were like, no one's ever going to want to watch this. This is stupid and boring. Like,
yeah, it's bringing like, in that
your
theatrical.
Job makes, your job makes the production better.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of it being, your personal choices, number one, bringing in characters, like how would this character touch each other? Where are they in their relationship? And not just the actor's friendship. It's really, like you said, checking in and checking out, clocking in to now the choices I'm making are my character's choices. The way I'm touching you is based on the character that I'm portraying right now. It's not Christina doing it. And then you check out, okay, now these are Christina's notes of how I felt that scene went. You know what I mean? And being able to separate that. But yes, to make it look good for the camera, for the audience, and making it technical in a way helps you, the actor, separate from those personal moments. So then you land in the comfortability of it. You know that for these two beats, our lips are together. For this beat, the hand's going to travel down my back. It sounds technical, and there's been articles and conversations of actors, A-listers going, it takes away the spontaneity. But the spontaneity can take actors out of their performance. And audiences aren't stupid. We talk about it all the time. You can watch something and be like, why did that feel weird? Well, probably because they actually felt strange in that moment or uncomfortable or and why didn't it sit well with me as an audience member? But then there's those ones where that looks so real, that had to have been real, that has to be real. And then no, actually it's not. It's just well choreographed or thought of or filmed or lighting or all the things. There's so much. It's just so fun.
Yeah. And a funny thing that I had when I was conversing with my co-star, and we're still great friends to this day, was I had told him, I was like, look, I've had these really interesting reactions from people in my quote unquote other life. And he got so mad because he's like, that completely disrespects the work that we're doing. And it made me reflect on it. I'm like, this is really hard.
Yeah. It's
really vulnerable. We worked so hard. It was exhausting. And it was a weird feeling of like some people being like, ooh, you must be enjoying that. You get to make out with this like young, hot guy. I'm like, what?
How do I react to that?
No. Like, I am not. Am I supposed to be enjoying it? I'm not enjoying this. Yep. This is like technical work. And it's hard.
I'm doing my job. Like, do you ask that of a gynecologist? Do you ask that of, someone giving you a pedicure? Like, are they enjoying touching my feet? No, they're doing their job. And if you feel that there is, or there, maybe find a different doctor or a different mani-pedi person. I don't know. But yeah, it is interesting that the entertainment industry allows people to, or society has made it so it's not work. Like the conversation of the starving artist always comes to mind for me because I really don't like that phrase because there's so many artists who are not starving. And if that's like the language and the words that come up, then again, we're not opening up to the universe to be plentiful, to have this industry supported in the way that it should, in my mind. And the fact that so many of us struggle for our passion, it's like you said, it's like a disrespect or a lack of it. So, but if we can eliminate that language, that verbiage, then I really believe then society will start seeing it, as my career, my job. The word career alone levels up, I feel like, the work that we do. I don't know. I think words have power and it's so important. And again, it just draws me back to being an intimacy coordinator and finding and the communication side of it and finding the language that works for this director and that director. And it's always going to be different. One of the questions I get, or even in training, one of the things I talk about a lot, I don't train, sorry, but when we're in like conversation within workshops and training, is, what do I do if this happens? Or like, this is a scenario, how do we handle it? And then of course there's 5, 6, 100 different responses and answers, but it's like, you want someone to give you the exact way that you should respond. And sorry, something just popped into my head about when I was pregnant the first time. I just wanted someone to tell me what labor was going to feel like, be like as a dancer, someone who's in my body, someone who's always feeling and communicating with movement and body and how that feels. And can you just tell me what it feels like to go into labor? No, of course not. Like, everyone's experience is different. And then you handle it when it happens. So every single one of my interactions with different actors, be it an A-lister, be it an indie film, it could be the same scene almost, but it's entirely different, the whole process of it. And I love that. And I love pointing that out, is that you want to be a good problem solver. You want to be a good communicator, an excellent listener, an excellent observer of what's happening, so that we can, have the most joyful experience we can on set or on stage.
Yeah. And I think I was like, I have so many thoughts. Oh my gosh, my brain is like
me too. I'm like
exploding. I'm so excited.
Ding,
I'm so
ding,
excited
ding everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. I'd love to talk about that last C because it was very impactful for me, the idea of a closure practice.
Yeah.
Again, like I was saying, like as a scientist, the science makes sense, right? You have to do something that for me, I needed to have a tactile.
Yes.
I needed to hear something.
Yes.
We needed to like look at there was a lot of our senses needed to like
engage.
It's literally tricking the brain to be like, ding, right?
That's
Go
right.
back into
You hear
kids.
it, you feel it, you're connected 100%.
It's interesting because my thought was, and this, please correct me if this is completely wrong, but we see as the public, a lot of actors and actresses fall in love on set. There's so many examples about it, right? And whether or not the relationship is sustained in the quote unquote real world, whatever. In my mind, I see that and I go, meh, they didn't have a closure practice. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, right? Because this is a fairly kind of new thing, but do you think that plays a part? And are you seeing now, like, again, and I know I'm waxing a bit about my own experience, right? Like, I look at the co-star that I had, who, when I was the character, I was infatuated with him. As soon as we tapped out, it was an incredibly exciting feeling in my body of, it's gone.
Right.
And he would clock it, and he'd be like, he's like, what? Because he's so experienced with it. He's like, yeah, he's like, you're back. Do you feel anything for me? Like, so excited. I'm like, no, bro, no.
Nice.
It's fascinating from a biochemical standpoint. But do you think that is part of the, I don't want to say problem, but what we were seeing in the industry before?
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to say. I talk to my teenagers a lot and they have the what ifs, and I'm not a what if type of person. I'm like, let's live in the moment. Let's live in the now. Let's have the conversations. And I love making sure to have the conversations. Like, you are going to feel something. Like, when there is friction, there is action, you may have a reaction. Your body can't tell the difference between imagination. It's going to like, you know, your blood's going to pump and things are going to happen, and we'll have tools to sort of come out of that and pop back in, but have those initial conversations. I don't know. I am a person who loves many people for many different reasons and have so many connections. Like, sometimes my husband's a little bit, you say I love you a lot to a lot of people. And I'm like, I do, because I love people in different ways. Like, there's so, actually somebody just posted about Valentine's Day and how, you know, there's a lot of focus on romantic in connections and not like the brother sister, the parental love, the friendship love, all so many different kinds of love, you know, the mentor love. Like, I don't know. So I can see how people can fall in love. I do. And I think that, again, just has to come to a conversation. And like, maybe you are meeting your person in this moment, and then maybe the rest of your life will be now with this, in this new scenario. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as everybody who is affected and connected has the conversations. And that brings us to consent, right? Like, understanding your own consent and boundaries. Like, I love when we talk about consent and boundaries, if I just flip this question a little bit, there's a tool from Carly D. Weckstein, and she's online, but it's just a free questionnaire that you ask yourself as an actor coming into these roles. Like you had said, if people are transitioning from being a lawyer to an actor or anywhere in their lives, and things they should consider or might like to consider are, would I do a kissing scene? Would I do a role like that? Asking yourself, would I be bare chested on film or on stage, or what are my limits? Like, ask yourself all of these questions, right? Like, for where you sit now, because they might change in 3 months, they might change in 3 years. You might get more comfortable being an actor, and you can go back to this questionnaire, go back to asking yourself these questions about intimacy or vulnerability, or just the umbrella of the imagination world. Like, action film? Would I do sword fighting? Would it, like, all the things? Why don't you ask yourself as an actor or as a person interested in becoming acting, would I do an intimate scene? Because you can say no, and you can ask the questions before you sign on for the project. Okay, I got my sides. I did the audition. I did the monologue, but what is the show that I'm signing up for? Sometimes we're so hungry for work. We're just like, there's an audition. It needs a redhead who's in her 25, looks 25 or whatever. And you go out for it, but then, okay, wait, what did I just sign up for? Right? So where is all that information before? Again, like the audience, you want to preempt all of it so you are giving clear consent to say yes to something, you know exactly what you're signing up for. And so, yeah, having those conversations with yourself, and then it's easier when you're in the room, you've had your third call back, you're excited, sounds like a fantastic role. Oh, by the way, we'd like you to be topless. Yeah, sure, of course. That's totally fine. And then you get to the time and you're like, oh, wait, there's 30 people in the room, and now I got to derobe, and I'm feeling very uncomfortable, So having those conversations in your back pocket with yourself before you're in the room or asked to answer a tough question in the moment, it's always a great thing to do. Mm.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's definitely a fear, and I'm hoping it's waning as, the intimacy professional world gains, I don't want to use the word respect. That's awful. But, like notoriety, that people are like, yes, this is a thing. Because so much, and I think especially, I know it is rampant in the whole industry, but I know us as like female identifying individuals have this feeling of, again, scarcity mindset. I'm happy to be here.
That's right.
I'm easy to work with. Yeah, fine. I'll do whatever. Because if I demand an intimacy professional on set, or if I say, no, I'm not comfortable with that, they'll be like, great. There's 50 other women waiting in the wings who are comfortable with that. Goodbye.
Right. That's how we feel. And this is another fun thing I love about getting older is a lot of that starts to go away. Like worrying about what other people are going to say and think, or, I don't know, just sitting in my age a little bit. It's like, this is where I am. This is what I'd like from it. There'll be other work if this doesn't work out. Having, I don't know, just, I guess, years behind you. It's not, I wouldn't call it confidence, because I don't know that I'm like, booming with confidence all the time. Like there's that inner voice that you always want to shut up. But I think it's okay. Like it's okay to, or not fall in line with those threats or those thoughts of like, especially in dance, like it was all the time, well, there's 20 people in the wings waiting for your part. So next. And it could be a lot of next, but yeah, now I just really hope that the new generation can at least ask the questions and not be afraid of a no and move on, because it just meant it wasn't for you. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting industry.
It really is. And so I would love to hear, and what a typical day, say you're hired for a film. What does a typical day look like to you? I know it's probably different when like pre, post, whatever, but what's like a usual like day on set for you?
So the day on set is the end. I feel like the end, not the very end, but the end of the road for me. It really does start in once you're brought on board to a production, having so many conversations. And so it doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen on set, hopefully, because they should be hiring you in advance. But there has been times where like, oh my God, we need someone. We realize, can you come tomorrow? And even still, it's like, okay, well, I'd like to talk to the director. I'd like to talk to the wardrobe. It's great that we're introduced prior, and I really need to talk to the actors, because we want that at least 24 hours, that time to sit with the ask. This is what's being asked of you. So when I'm brought in at least a week before is where I like to sit, because then finding people's schedule, connecting with all the folks, getting all the information. This is the ask. I have what I call actor intakes. So we would meet on Zoom so we can see each other. I think it's important to read the body language along with the asks and not just like hear it and be, this is what's being asked of you. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with everything. I'm fine with kissing. Okay, well, is it okay if the kiss travels down your neck or in your ear? And they'd like a shot of lot of lip play on your earlobe. Oh my gosh, I'm so ticklish on my ear. Okay, so let's unbox that, or like talk about that, or how we can switch it, or how the camera can sit, lighting, all the things. So lots of conversations. And then when I get on set, I check in with the actors. I come in early. I always want to make sure that, because consent and boundary changes, how are you feeling today? This is a bad example, but it's happened actually quite a few times in my experience, is that day with the kissing and the action, we have a cold sore with one of our actors. Whoa. So a lot could change. So anyway, just going in, seeing how they're feeling, or with a woman's menstrual cycle or anything can happen on the day after, it's been a week of planning, or this is the shot that's happening today. And it's hard in film and TV to change that. And it's obviously even harder in live performance. The show must go on. So do we have plan Bs set in place for that? How would we mask that kiss? How could we change it? How could we feel good about our wardrobe if we are on our menstrual cycle or whatever, right? So I really do love to just have those in place. And then on the day I check in, we make sure everyone's on the same page. Then I would check in with production. Often, if it's a closed set, we have another safety meeting in the morning for film. For theater, again, I guess for theater, that as a choreographer, you work in the rehearsal process in setting the show up, but then the choreographers, the directors, they walk away and you folks are left to run the show with the stage manager. So, it would be totally different, but on set, I'll just focus on set, I guess, because my mind's going, oh my gosh, there's so many things I do. On set, then when we get to blocking, or we get to the part where we're in the space, it totally depends what the scene is, but I want to make sure that I've checked in with our stage managers, with the DOP, introduce myself. Sometimes, a lot of times, this is the first time they're meeting me, and it's like, who's this other person on set, and why do they have a voice, and why are they right in the actor's face? So, hi, I'm Christina, I'm the Intimacy Coordinator, all the things. I have a little badge with my title and stuff in case they don't have one for me, just so everyone's like, strange person, get out of my space. And so, just checking in with everyone. Then we're on the scene, making sure if it's closed set, if they've done all of the prep, whether that's flagging and making sure monitors are turned off or on, or bigger sets have feeds to people's phones and iPads, so we turn all of that off. So it's sort of a long process of checking in before we actually get to doing the deed. And then, just making sure that the choreography and everything feels good, and how many times we have it in ourselves to do it, depending on how intricate the scenes are. We talk about all that stuff, I don't know, for example, if it's simulated sex and it could be on a desk or at a kitchen counter, like in that moment in real life, you go through the cycle of it. On set, we're filming it 5, 10, 20 times, different angles. Your edge of your glutes are on that cold, stone counter. Like, how many times do you think someone can do that, or go through that choreography and the motion, or, my knees hitting the floor, I'm on the floor, knee pads, like all of the little things, right? So you just want to check and make sure that the set works with this. How many times that we're all on board with, we could maybe get five times in this angle done. So are we getting it? Let's tweak it. Let's try and just keep it easy physically for our instrument, our vessel. I try to watch the monitor, help the director with any questions. A lot of times, like when I go in, I say pre-production, tell me your perfect vision, perfect world. What does this look like on set? Use whatever language you want with me. Like, you can use effing, they're going to be effing this way. I want to grab them by the hair. Like whatever language feels comfortable to you, I am not going to take offense. So depending, again, going back to communication, who I'm working with, what the director is, how they communicate on, they might want me to be the one who tells the translation of what we're capturing on the day on film. I want it to be more aggressive. I want it to be this, like, because if you say that to an actor or in the moment, it might take them out of character. It might trigger them from something that's happened in their real life. We also want to participate in language that is technical, like you said, and not emotionally fired or triggered. So a lot of times directors, in my case anyway, have asked me to communicate their tweaks, which is also interesting for the rest of the crew to see because that doesn't happen a lot. Yeah. And so, or they'll be like, how should I say this? Or how can we make this more that? And I'll say, well, what if we ask for it to be closer? Or what if we switch the angle? Or what if it's prolonged? Or the energy in the hand reads? It doesn't have to squeeze. You don't have to hurt someone. But if you engage the muscles in your hands, it's going to look like the energy you want. Like so many things. Anyway. Yeah. And then, before when we get in there, I want to make sure the actors have checked in with each other too and done I always talk about doing the high five and engaging, and we're checking in. And I remember some of my A-listers are like, you want me to high five? And I was like, well, it's just a nice little tool. We'll try it. And then it's so funny because they're totally off. And then I don't even have to say anything. They'll be with their co-star, high five. Like, they've said cut. And it's like, high five. Yeah. Fantastic. Like, it's so interesting how we like kind of poo-poos it sometimes, but it is, like you said, it's so interesting. Yeah, and then we do it at the end. We just check in, closure, high fives, and then I like to have a moment. It depends who it is, because sometimes I've actually had a couple actors be like, I've worked with an intimacy coordinator before. Please don't check in with me every 5 minutes. That it pulls me out of character. I don't like it. Whenever it was too much, it made me get into my head. 100%. I can be a fly on the wall, and we have our tools. We know that if you make eye contact with me, like a moment, whatever it is, we don't have to. I'll have to check in if you need me. You know where I'm standing here, like all the little things. Yeah. Or you guys are good. I'll just be here, helping the director, whatever. Yeah. So there's just so many different ways.
It's just what it makes me feel, besides like so excited, is it turns everything, it just amplifies the creative collaboration. Whoa. And it almost feels like here's the actor, here's the cast, here's the crew. You are kind of that middle point of being like, let's all play together. Yeah. And when it does, like everything about this is why we want to be actors in the first place and crew, right? It's creation of a thing and it's collaborating with others.
I love that you said
why
crew.
Would you? Oh,
yeah, I love that.
Why would you not want that?
I love that you said crew because going into it again, I believe that the light was shone on this role after the Me Too movement with a focus of women and the feminine experience, or like the female experience. Sorry, and I love when I come in anyway. Like one of many of my focuses is the crew, is the male experience. Again, going back, I think of West Side Story just because we've been involved in that live show so many times. But the boys that have to engage with Anita in a violent way, the focus is always, Anita, how are you? How does that feel for you? This character, like, and what about those actors who have to create the assault? They go away and they've had so many feelings. And I actually know one who that show kind of ruined that actor's career, and they didn't want to do it anymore. That is, because it was too much. And that makes me sad. But it also is like, not everyone's meant to have the longevity for this career. Like, this is a hard job, as well as it being fun and interesting. And everyone thinks of it as, I don't know, like not really work. It's hard work. There's so much to it. But yeah, bringing in the crew and considering the crew. I was talking to one of the series that I was on, and a lot of times when it's big shows, they only clock the scenes that the production has clocked. So even though I would love to see all of the scripts, I really advocate for reading through it, because I might clock something you don't clock. Doesn't mean I have to come in. It doesn't mean it's going to be an extra expense for you, because of course, bottom line, all these productions want to know how much is it going to cost. But just to have those conversations or considerations, like you said, or flag it in the call sheet, this is happening today for the crew. Because, for example, there was a strip scene and the actor was fine with it, didn't need an intimacy coordinator. It was a solo act, not a big deal. Everyone's like, great, actor doesn't need it. Done. But what about the audience? What about the BG that are watching this? What about the crew members who, in this case, one of the crew members was transitioning and had a lot of body conversations for themselves. And then there is this confident human, portraying a character and feelings. And it brought a lot up. And thankfully, I'm on the call sheet and the call comes out, to me, and just like, do you have someone I can talk to? I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but this is a lot. So fantastic. And then it's going back to production going, this is why I'd like the script from top to bottom. So I can just say, have you put a disclaimer to the crew that this is what's happening today? Like, do they know to the totality of these amounts of clothes are coming off, or whatever it is, right? I think it's Jennifer Lawrence who was talking in an interview saying that they were nervous about being in a film and having so much nudity. But then by the end of it, she was so fantastic and it was so empowering for her, and that's great. And she didn't even feel like she needed to wear a robe sometimes, and she'd just be walking from, this scene to that scene. And then it's like, but what about all the people who are going home to their kids and their families and their wives and having feels and not having closure practices or check-ins about seeing a fantastic naked human? Where does that leave them? Like, has the conversations happened? So I think that's fun to bring into production. Not that I need to talk to everyone. Like, that's not the intimacy coordinator's job, I think, to counsel, but I think it is to flag and to just be aware that they might want to have a conversation with someone, or they might want to have a different person come in and work for them that day if it's going to be, that triggering or something. But yeah, again, just bringing conversations, bringing thought. And the producer was so it was so interesting after the fact when we talked about it, and they were like, I didn't even think about that. Thank you. It's nice. And actually it makes me think of the last time, when we saw each other at TIFF at the firecracker party. I've never really gone to TIFF to network. And one of my best friends was there for that reason and was like, come to these events. And I was like, okay. And I thought, oh, it's going to be weird. But I do love talking about intimacy coordination. So, but it was so interesting that so many people still didn't really know what it was, that it was a thing. And I was like, because I've been in this world now for, 5 years and talking about it, and it's my focus, but it doesn't mean it's someone else's priority or in their peripheral or focus at all. So I was really excited, but also shocked, but also like interested that there's still so many people in the industry who aren't clear about what it is an intimacy coordinator does, or why they're there, or like you said, the police and like all the things. So it's kind of exciting to be in this industry where there's still so much education to happen. And I appreciate you so much for having me on this call for that reason. So,
I so appreciate you. It's just like fascinating to me. And I think, so again, with that being said, how does a production hire you? Do you have an agent? Is there a guild? Like, how does it work?
In Canada, I do have an agent. It's interesting you said guild, because I have so many friends in Sweden, and they have an intimacy coordinator guild where you can go on there and find the intimacy coordinator that will fit your production. But I do have an agent here in Canada, although I do a lot of footwork myself, because I feel like, in fact, we were just having this conversation, that I feel like a talent agent, because I've been a dancer and actor and performer in that sense, so it just made sense to add this to my resume and stay with the agent who knows me. But they get information after the production has essentially started, right? Like, okay, we're looking for movement for this scene, or I need an actor for this scene. But I feel like we need to get in pre-production in the creative process when these conversations happen and the scripts. Whereas right now, still, it's like, oh, we have a scene coming up with intimacy. Let's find an intimacy coordinator. And sometimes it's like, so actually a couple of times, like, do you want to like interview me? Like, it's so dumb, but I'm like, I want the job. Yes, I do. But am I the right person for your production? Like, you might want to, I don't know. Yeah. So that, and I have been interviewed for many as well, but yeah, I feel like I'm trying to figure that out, how to get in pre-production, like it's not a Yahtzee, but like something like, and like obviously the conversation right now after the strike and so much progress has been made with SAG-AFTRA and intimacy coordinators maybe being a part of the actor union, the SAG-AFTRA union, and the protocols and the conversations that are happening from that end. Fantastic, because we do align with that. But I really believe that we need to be brought in before we actually are. But yeah, what tends to happen is the PM or the person doing the scheduling or stage manager production will be like, oh yeah, we need an intimacy coordinator. The rare occasion, which is nice, is the actors, like you said earlier, hopefully aren't scared, but know that they can ask for, once they know they're going to be involved, is there an intimacy coordinator connected to this production /scene /whatever. So it can and should come from the actors to double check and check. The production should be on top of it. It usually comes from the PM in scheduling, and then they get the phone call. I feel like the information is getting out there that we should be engaged a week in advance. But still, I get calls 2 days before to get someone in. So yeah, but and my agent now as well is like, we're starting to get our name, that there's someone to call. But I think right now it's been word of mouth. Like, I know Christina, I've worked with Christina, or I've been blessed because I went to Ryerson, the film and TV crew members, DOPs, ADs, who I went to school with and I'm still friends with, are now those people at productions, and they're like, you should call Christina. So yeah, I don't know, word of mouth, or a lot of times some of, like you said, the OGs, who I don't consider myself an OG, but like the Siobhans, the Mattias, the folks who came before me, if they're too busy because there's not enough of us, they'll give my name or say reach out. But yeah. Nice. But you can find us.
Do you have any?
I was going to say you can find us at Intimacy Coordinators United on Instagram, which is a group of movement specialists, Anissa Teshbar, Lisa Stevens, and myself at the moment, who have come together through dance and movement and train together. And we come to it with that eye specifically for communicating the body, the movement, the needs, and Love
it. Do you have any favorite or memorable times on set that you can share?
As an intimacy coordinator, I do. But I also feel like I don't think I should share those ones, because
that's totally fine. I understand.
I'm trying to think how, but I don't know. There's so many in my own life, where I was the performer, and, I was on Rain, actually. This is one of the huge impactful stories that really made me want to be an intimacy coordinator. But anyway, I was on the show Rain, and I was playing a prostitute for Greer's story in like season 4 or whatever. And so it was continuity. I was on quite a lot and working with in the taverns, a lot of BG interactions. And so I was the lady of the night. And this one particular moment where it was just passing by, giving a drink, sitting on a lap. And I remember saying to the actor who was BG at the time, but I'm not an actual prostitute. You know that, right? Like, can we stick with the choreography? Like, please don't touch me there. Or the pulling of the hair, wanting to kiss my neck, and taking so many privileges once the word action was given. And as a young performer, feeling like I can't say stop because we're in the background. We're not the focus of the scene. I'm not a big deal. Not that I'm ever a big deal, but just wow. But having again that internal self of not worrying about asking. So I went to the AD and said, "This is happening. I'm feeling very uncomfortable." Okay, I think we've got the shot. So let whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then we're going to go again. Everybody back to their ones. You know how fast paced it is. And I'm like, excuse me. Again, still not feeling like I can't be the person to not let this continue. But like hands going up under, like, I can't even believe this person. And so I at least filed a report at the end, but I just feeling like there's nobody here who can really help me. Like I couldn't go to the director. Like looking back, I wish I had done 100 things, and I'm sure people have hundreds of these stories. But yeah, but saying it to him, and then I think we did 3 or 4 takes, and it just was getting worse, and he thought it was funny, and yeah. And I'm like, what the heck? I feel so I want to be that person that anyone in the moment can come to me or feel they can anyway. And it's so nice to not have that power dynamic, that power level, because I've worked on so many films too, and indies and projects where it's like, oh, we're all friends. And I remember talking to this one director, and they're like, but this is my best friend. And, you know, like we've come up together and all the things. I said, imagine how hard it is to say no to your best friend when you put your money in your project. Everyone is in this project, like wants to see so much success. And so you think everyone, and they were like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it that way. And so I'm like, yeah, nobody wants to let you down. No, like you don't want to let them down either. And I know you'll be like, it's okay, come talk to me. But it's still that initial, oh, I don't want to tell them I'm uncomfortable with the scene. And can we rewrite it? Who wants to ask someone to rewrite it or rethink it or all the things? So, but they can tell me and I can tell you and then give you options. Because that's the other thing I love. Not just coming with a problem, but coming with a solution, right? So, okay, this has come to me. They're not comfortable doing that, but we can do it maybe this way, or do you like it this way? Or what if we try that? Like, and not just be like, sorry, they said no. Done. Yes. No, we don't. We want to collaborate, like you said, grow, communicate, all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. There's the whole thing of, this career maybe never needed to exist, but it had to because of examples like that, as a small smidgen, right? Obviously, there are so many other reasons why this needs to exist, but like, that just... The other thing that I love about the collaborative process, again, my science brain clicks into gear about when no happens in science or when things get disproven. A scientist doesn't say, weh. They go, ooh, why? Right? Yeah. How can we, like, when somebody says no, that doesn't mean like no period. It's like no and. Like that's also a jumping off point for collaboration. Yeah. And I think that's exciting.
100%.
That's what we're here for.
I just watched, was it Lessons in Chemistry, that series on Netflix? And Have you seen it? Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a moment where they said in science, usually discovery leads to more questions. Like you're working through it and then you're like, oh, what about this or whatever. And I love that because it is exactly what you said. A no is so great. I think a no shouldn't be, you shouldn't worry about a no ever because it makes you think outside of the box. It makes you come up with other solutions and questions and conversations. And and you've probably heard this before talking to any intimacy coordinator, but in improv, yes, and is the way to roll. Actors are trained to not be troublesome. Let's, find our yes. But if we find our no, I love no, but I think it was Ida O'Brien, who is one of the OG from the UK, who's done some fantastic work, but listening to a lecture from her, and she said, no's are exciting, no, but it's that but that's like, well, what if? Even though I said I don't like what if questions, but the no but is so great to have in your toolkit. And to be open with it. And I think you really nailed it that this industry is collaborative. I think the people that have longevity and survive and find the happiness in it are the ones who like to collaborate, who collaboration excites them. Because when you're in it just for yourself and I find the success can then bring unhappiness, or if you're in it for yourself, you don't go too far. Because you really have to like working with other people. It's kind of the job. Unless you're in a couple of those films where it's just you, which is fun too. But then there's the crew. Yeah. There's the crew. Of course, there's the crew.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
There's always stuff I really feed off of listening and questions. But again, check out, I think, ask yourself those questions about your own consent. That's really good. Pardon me, knowing that you have the onus to ask for an intimacy coordinator. If you're interested in becoming an intimacy coordinator, there's so many. Actually, IDC just announced, I don't know if you saw it because you've trained with them, but they've announced a change in their educational process because it was very expensive, very frustrating in the levels of trying to get in because it's first come, first serve. With them specifically, or in LA, it's so expensive to get there. You have to be there for like 10 weeks or however long. And that's like a huge expense for any Canadians. Principal Intimacy Professionals, the Canadian educational system that is available now, is fantastic. They're decolonizing the process. It's a conversation of where are you financially, where are you open, like your time management to learn. So check them out. I think they're fantastic. I know that I may be biased because I went through, but I have theatrical intimacy education who's so generous with their information as well. But yeah, you find how you like to learn, find the people who you connect with, and then go for that if you're interested. But like you said too, I'm so excited and proud that you went through the level 1 through curiosity, because I'm always thinking every director, every DOP should have this education, should go, especially our leaders in the process, our directors and our stage managers, to have the training and the consciousness of consideration and sensitivity, and having the language that is so helpful, like non-triggering ways to communicate, or just considerations. Essentially, if you can just find time to tuck some of those into your learning and education and style, I think it's really important.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Christina, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation. She and I have had lots of emails back and forth about, editing the podcast. She's just absolutely wonderful, and she's so busy. Yay! This is what we want in our industry. I'm so thrilled for her. I hope you will all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors, and I hope you will all consider liking, subscribing, and reviewing this podcast because it fills me with so much joy. Bye!